11th Hour Racing Team have discovered cracks in both their rudders. Now the skipper, sailors and shore crew spring into action to hopefully keep the boat racing.
Due to the fact that we had sail issues yesterday, we find ourselves in light air, went to do a peel, and as it got light, we did some routine checking of the yacht. And coming back from doing the peel, Jack noticed a crack in the starboard rudder, which is clearly disconcerting, particularly in this part of the world. Justine, the genius that she is, suggested that we check the other rudder. And we proceeded to do that, and there's a massive crack just at the root from our side. There's no time like the present to deal with this. We're in light air, and the slower we go, the lighter it'll get. So the sooner we get some information and can make some decisions, certainly the better for our group on board.
So both rudders on 11th Hour Racing Team showing damage, and they've only got one spare. Which rudder do you swap out? Where do you deploy the spare? Well, luckily, Sci-Fi had a logical way to make the decision.
One way or another, we're going to have to put a spare rudder in here. So we'll work towards that.
Say from a weather standpoint, basically we get chased up by this ridge. It's going to be lighter on this tack. Then we jibe, and obviously a front comes in, so it's stronger conditions on the other. So maybe it makes sense. It's another reason why it makes sense to do the starboard rudder. And when we're going the other way on the new rudder, if we do need to do a repair to that one or the port rudder, then we have the choice.
So because the boat is sailing on starboard tack, that means that their starboard rudder or their right-hand rudder is up, rotated out of the water because they don't need it at the moment. So what Sci-Fi is suggesting is that's the one that they change. But it's not because they're not using it right now. It's because if they put the good spare on that one, shortly their plan is to jibe. And when they jibe, the wind will be on the other side, the boat will heel in the other direction, and they will swap which rudder is down and which rudder is up. For 11th Hour Racing Team, the light winds they are sailing through mean the inspection of the damage is easier. But there's no getting around the fact that this will be another reason that the sailors lose mile in the race. They're not the only boat to experience issues, far from it. Team Malizia's mast repair last week still seems fresh. For Will Harris, the German boat is sailing well after the work they did. But the constant trials everyone is facing is a reminder of what it means to race through this part of the world.
I found it really weird to think, if we have any problems, if whatever's happening, we've got to figure it out by ourselves, because we're basically the only humans down here. And I found that quite daunting, but very very special feeling as well. So not many people get to experience this, I think. And that's what makes it really special. So but I like it. It's amazing conditions so far.
Just in front of Team Malizia is Biotherm, and they've certainly found a way to bounce back from the trials and tribulations that they had at the beginning of the leg. They've got a good way of riding the highs and lows.
The mood on board is just as good as ever. The proof is that when in the daytime, when I go to have my off watch, I have to put my noise reducing headphones on to cancel out the sound of laughter in the cockpit. And it's a real pleasure to sail with people who are happy to be here and enjoying it, because sometimes the conditions are a little bit against us.
Ah merde! Tu me déconcentres, oh non! Dégage! À te coucher!
Biotherm feeling strong in second place after putting those issues that they had at the beginning of the leg behind them. And of course, that's where 11th Hour Racing Team want to be, but they've got to deal with those rudder issues first. And like any of our ocean race sailors, they're taking the problem head on. The starboard rudder was unbolted from the system and removed from the back of the boat. The cracks in the stock clearly visible. It's a damaged rudder, but it's still one of only 3 rudders they have on board, so care was taken not to damage it any further, as the plan might be to use this rudder again if they can repair it on board the boat.
Yep.
Once it was fed through the forward hatch, it was safely stored away from any hard edges before the spare rudder was retrieved. The only issue being getting it to the back of the boat without hitting anything en route.
Yeah, you want to meet me on the other side?
It took every crew member steadying the blade to get the rudder into position before it could be slotted through the stock and rotated into place. Jack Boutel was tethered to the boat while leaning over the stern, refitting the bolts to hold the rudder firm.
3 more.
It's not a happy moment for any of our teams when issues suddenly spring up in front and slow their progress. But the Shore team were hard at work coming up with a plan of what to do next. And for team CEO Mark Tao, this was a scenario that they'd planned for.
Yeah, I think the severity and intensity of this particular leg is not to be underestimated. The longest leg in the 50-year history of the event, obviously more Southern Ocean consecutive miles than ever sailed before. We could feel that on the dock and in all the preparation leaving. I think that's very much on the mind of the entire team. There's thousands of miles to go between where we are and Cape Horn. It's no surprise we faced a few challenging moments in this race. I think all the teams have. I think from our perspective, I'm really proud of how we're managing the situation, and that extends holistically across the team, not just from what the sailors are doing on board, but also the support and the engagement of the Shore team. I'd be lying if I said that people weren't disappointed. I think all of us are feeling, a mix of emotions: disappointed, frustrated. We've had a ton of time to prepare. We have a great, support system and all the tools to succeed, and success hasn't quite come our way yet. And that's tough to deal with. But at the same time, I also think that, the team this is a moment where we're digging deep. We're really, focused on the big picture, on trying to work together, and believing that, collectively we can work together to get to a better place. So that makes me quite proud.
It's big, dramatic moments like this that get remembered in the race. But the challenge is relentless for our sailors, whether it's big or whether it's small. And this is what they've signed up for. This is what makes the race special. And right now, out in the water, all of our teams are desperate to keep their progress as efficient as possible. The wind is making it hard. It's constantly changing its mind. And the sailors are facing that every moment challenge of rebalancing the boat. And the temptation must be very real to simply ignore those small changes in the breeze and just ride it out. But that means going slow. So, of course, that's not what any of our sailors do.
The wind all night has been like this. Up, down, up, down.
The wind is playing with us. It's quite tricky between less than 15 and more than 25. We can't change of sail because it changes every 5 minutes. So we have to manage with the trimming of the sails.
And we've got the J2 head sail, but we're playing in and out of a reef, which means the main sail we reduce by about 25% and then put it back up. Just now I spend 10 minutes doing all this as quickly as possible, so we lose as little speed as possible while we put the sail back up.
On IMOCA we don't have a lot of winches, and actually we have not a lot because we have some issues, so it's quite hard to playing with our nervous. Normally we said around the world it's 1 issue per day, but actually I think it's more 5 than 1 from the start.
What are those issues that Paul Mayer mentioned? He hinted at some problems with 1 or more winches, but also they seem to have some trouble with their lines and blocks around the boat. None of this is surprising. This is just normal wear and tear. Well, it's normal wear and tear for a boat that is built light and is pushed this hard for this long. All our sailors expect to have to fix just about every system on board the boat, and they train for it. On 11th Hour Racing Team, that person is Jack Boutel. He has been able to throw his expertise behind pretty much every problem that they faced. But for this one, he needs to call in some expert advice dealing with the 2 large cracks on the rudder they've just taken off.
So I'm looking at this one, and the guys are trying to come up with a bit of a repair schedule of what we can do at sea. If we can eventually grind this back and put a carbon patch on it. But it's hard because this sort of job you know, it's a lot of carbon. There's probably, I think there's 7 or 8 layers of outer wrapping, plus then you've got, you know, if it's beyond that, it's a lot of carbon. And obviously you don't have back pumps or filler or paint or any of that sort of stuff as well, so whatever I do is going to be pretty crude. Might be able to get us to the end.
Now, it's worth pointing out at this point that there's something important to understand about the points for this leg. People talk about this leg being double points, but it's truer to say that there are twice as many points available on this leg. There are 2 times to score, one at the finish line in Brazil and one at 143 degrees longitude, or the eastern end of Australia. The boats will be awarded points for crossing this line, and that's due on Monday. So for 11th Hour Racing Team, their first hurdle is getting to that line and securing those points.
Knowing that we can at least get half the leg points, you know, in a good way.
Yeah.
And then after that, I don't know what
We
this...
can get some points.
I don't know what the solution would be, but
We should probably get.
I don't know how you feel about that judge, but ultimately,
Yeah.
we got the full stop.
I think we should grind this one back. We should sail completely normal to the scoring gate. And if the f***ing rudder blows off between now and the scoring gate, we'll put the other one on and link to wherever we have to link to, right? And then if nothing obvious has happened, we stop, we do an inspection, and we decide, basically. But I think we need to grind that one back.
Okay.
So it's back on deck with the broken rudder to start stripping away the broken carbon, and unfortunately, the damage runs deep.
That's a lot of wrapping down that it was delaminated through.
Yeah, it's
Like that's
the whole-
delaminated through the whole wrapping. You know, we have a crack about halfway down, which for me is, it's a ride off the rudder basically, from the one halfway down. And the cracking around the top, which we have on port, is basically the wrapping laminate, we think. So the actual stock part, the actual structural part of the rudder is still there. Now that we have the starboard spare one in, which is good, well, hopefully good, because it's the same as the others. We'll sail on this for a few days now, I think, and see how it holds up, and see how the port one holds up. You know, because we can't, you know, as nice as it is to just carry on at all times, you know, this leg you can't underestimate where we're going, and you know, the rudders are, you know, effectively one of the most fundamental parts of a sailing boat. If you can't steer, you can get into some pretty serious situations, especially where we are. So we have to make sure that what we're doing is, you know, obviously there's racing to a point, but then there's security of the yacht and the people on board. So we're taking all that into consideration as well. So lots to contemplate.
Whenever we've seen our sailors facing not just the possibility of having to slow down, but going all the way and pulling out of the leg, you can see how much it means to them to dig deep and find a way to keep racing. That's why so many of them are doing inspections of their boat at the moment, before the big weather hits and before a small problem might become big. And for Kevin Escoffier on board Team Holcim-PRB, he's got plenty of experience as to why that matters.
And you remember on the Rudder, I had an issue with one of these stringers, longitudinal stringers. I had to repair, so that's why I was at the bar. Foil case. It's a watertight part of the boat where the foil are sliding in and out. Everything looks nice. We have to double check also the onboard reporter chair, because when I see the time he spent in it, we could have a structural issue. Maybe the bunk as well.
Checks done and all things in good order on Team Holcim-PRB, but their lead continues to slim. The weather behind means it's all but certain that the chasing boats will close the gap by the scoring gate. It would be a cruel twist of fate for Kevin Escoffier and his team to lose the lead before those points are awarded, but we'll have to wait and see. But the boats behind need to keep pushing forward as their positioning on the next weather system will be critical.
So we are just the end of the Indian Ocean. We are reaching just ahead of France with the Malaysia in 11 hours just behind us and Holcim 100 miles in front of us. And, it depends on our speed, but if we are faster, we are more in the sunny condition, and if we are slower, the rain reach us, so it's more grey. So yes, it's since a few days we are on this tack, and probably a few more days.
Biotherm and the other chasing boats can see the possibility of the weather working in their favour. As the next system is rolling in behind them, this is their chance to catch Team Holcim-PRB. However, one of the chasing boats have their own challenge to contend with. Just as Sci-Fi had predicted, 11th Hour Racing Team's course led them into a jibe, and that meant swapping onto their fresh, spare rudder, a rudder they should be able to trust. But it's hard to relax when you're this far from land.
I mean, in theory, everything should be good. You know, that's why we changed. We got 2,000 miles in this direction on this known to be new rudder. Eventually the breeze will pick up and we'll have to put down the port rudder, which is still broken, in a windward capacity, and we'll have to monitor that. We've marked it so we can kind of track it underway periodically. Then questions remain about what we're going to do with the other rudder and the state of this port one, but for now, the primary lured rudder for the next 2,000 miles should be in good shape. I mean, it's been a long day. Nobody anticipated this. This started 10 hours ago. It only took an hour and a half to change the actual rudder, but it's consumed the entirety of the day. Grinding it down, investigating, talking to the design team, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Yesterday was all about repair and sales and no one got any sleep, and today's all about switching rudders and grinding them out and trying to make a plan for the future. Nobody got any sleep, so I'm going to try to. We have a yacht race going on. We just jibed on a shift that requires downloading weather, downloading competitor skits. It's just been a lot going on. But we look finally settled in decent shape, headed to the east, and I'm going to take this opportunity to get some rest.
Charlie Enright reflecting on what has been an incredible challenge for his sailors. And maybe you were wondering, just as I was, as whether he was talking to us, talking to the sailors on board, or whether he needed to hear himself say that. He needed to hear his own voice confirm that they'd made the right decisions, that they had been calm, that they had been able to deal with the situation well. I mean, all of the sailors on board our boats will be facing these moments of frustrations, but for the skipper, you cannot let those frustrations bubble over. You've got to appear professional and calm for the crew. Luckily for Charlie Enright, he's pretty good at that.
I've known and been racing with Charlie for over half my life. You know, we've experienced some incredible highs and also some really challenging moments. I was on board with him during the last race when we dropped our mast just after rounding Cape Horn. And, you know, Charlie's an incredible leader. He's always focused on the people and the safety of the crew. That's first and foremost his focus, but that also extends to the people and the entire team. If you watch him when he's not just when he's on the boat, but on shore, he's always checking in with everybody. He wants to make sure everybody's okay. He wants to understand how we can be better supporting everyone else to get the best out of the whole team. I think that's really part of what makes him unique. And he recognizes that to be successful, he needs to surround himself with people that are better than him. That really is the philosophy that we build this team with. And he trusts his team. He really does. He looks to Sci-Fi and trusts his gut on any navigational calls. Of course, he's still very happy and capable to make bold decisions when required. He has the experience to know, where the limit is and when to push and when not to. But I think he's the right balance of assertive, confident, but also humble and a team player.
For 11th Hour Racing Team, they have one goal: crossing the halfway scoring line and banking their hard work to this point. And they are not going slow at the moment. At over 22 knots, their speed is matching Team Milizia just ahead, and both these boats are putting the pressure on Biotherm in second. Out in the lead, and a good few knots slower, is Team Holcim-PRB. Kevin Escoffier needs to find something in the weaker breeze he has to keep his speed up as the pack is closing hard. We could see some place changes before the boats get to that scoring point on Monday, and I'm going to jinx it again and say we might even have a new leader as well. Keep your eyes glued to the tracker, we've got plenty of racing to come.